All right, guys, welcome back to another Real Talk episode. It's been a while, so I'm pretty excited today to talk to you about the Arken Optics line of scopes, specifically the 1 to 8, the 4 to 16 SH4 Gen 2 that you see right here, and the 7 to 35 EP lineup. But before we get into all that, guys, I just want to say thank you to the biggest sponsor of the channel, which is brownells.com. If you guys want to support the channel, please use the link in the description below. Head on over there, show those guys some love. You can use bro code RDB10 for qualifying orders. We'll save you 10% off, so that's huge. So big shout out to Brownells and a big appreciation to those guys. Secondly, I'm working for Energetic Armament now. These guys make amazing cans, so if you guys wouldn't mind heading over to their YouTube channel and subscribing to Energetic Armament, it would mean a lot to me. And lastly, Arken Optics gets a bad rap. I would say half the time they get a good rap and half the time they get a bad rap, depending on which reviewer you're watching. I think the reality is somewhere there in the middle, and we're going to talk about that today. So what is my experience? What is my relationship to Arken? Just for full disclosure, I did buy their 7 to 35 EP for this guy right here, which will pull up. So this is a newer scope for Arken. They just came out with this 7 to 35, and as far as my knowledge goes, I am not a big glass snob. I do have some experience with some really good glass, but and by no means like C does. That guy is phenomenal. I love his channel. I go to him for a lot of information actually as far as glass goes before making a purchase. But this guy does, there's not a ton of actual reviews out on this 7 to 35. And this is the first scope I bought from them because I had got this rifle from Springfield. This is the Waypoint 2020 and 7mm PRC. And I was really wanting a 7 to 35 for this thing. And it's just incredibly expensive to buy a Night Force Attacker 7 to 35 or a Leupold. Those things are a lot of money, which we'll get into in a little bit. But that's where I started with Arken. I actually bought this scope. And if you guys watched the channel a long time ago, I actually bought an Arken 5 to 25, which I never actually mounted up. I needed some money and I actually sold it. So with that being said, I do just want to talk to you guys really quickly about my experience and the background I have with them for full disclosure. So I bought this scope, and then after I bought this scope, I reached out to Arken because I was actually pretty impressed with it, and I asked them if they'd be willing to work with me to get some other scopes, in which they replied yes, they were, and they were able to send me the 5 to 25 that you see right here, the 4 to 16 that was on the Scar 17, and then lastly, the 1 to 8 on this guy right here, this 11.5. So let's just get right into the nitty gritty. So my first experience ever with the Arken was with the 7 to 35. And I like to make this comparison about glass, right? So I love wine, but I don't consider myself to be a wine sommelier, right? I don't consider myself to be the type of guy who can taste a 2016 of the same exact wine and taste a 2017 and be able to tell the difference in the wine. It's either, is it good or is it not good? So before you go any further in this review, before you say I'm a shill, before you say I am being too hard on them, just know this. I'm the average person, right? I mean, I shoot more than the average person for sure, most likely, but as far as the average gun owner goes, at least. But I am the average person to where I am not specialized in optics. My eye is not super, I'm not looking for super small details in the image. What I'm telling you is, does this work? Can you get hits with this? And are you really going to notice the difference, right? It's like if you buy a Rolex, it's just like a Night Force, right? Night Force, that NF on the side of the scope might make you feel good, like look good, feel good, play good, right? It might make you shoot better because you know you have that NF on the side. But if you buy a Rolex, a Citizen keeps just as good time as a Rolex, right? Some people argue even better, right? But the Rolex might make you feel better or make you feel cooler, make you feel more elite, but it's still going to keep the same time. And that's the way I feel about the Arkens in general. So I actually had the chance. I have a friend who has an Attacker 7 to 35, and this is not to put down any other companies by any means. And we'll just get this out there in the beginning right here. Arken Optics are made in China, but a lot of their EP line or all of their EP line have Japanese glass, but they are manufactured in China. So let's just get that out of the way. I'm not trying to compare it to a Night Force. I think that's a big mistake a lot of people make, is like saying, having comparison videos to this versus that. You really can't compare the two because this is a tiny fraction of the cost of what a Night Force Attacker costs you. And there's many reasons for that. They go direct to consumer. They are made in China for other reasons, right? And Night Force has government contracts, so they can kind of just name their price. And I'm not mad at them about that. But if you're a guy like me, and this is kind of getting ahead of myself to the main point of the video, if you have multiple guns, then you can't, if you're like me, you can't afford to put a Night Force Attacker on every single gun. So you're either going to have a safe full of half kitted out guns where you don't have optics for half your guns. Because if you're like me, you buy a brand new gun, that new gun comes in, the first thing I'm doing with that old gun on in the safe, is I'm taking all my attachments off it and I'm putting it on my new gun, because I just can't afford to buy another Surefire light, another EOTech or optic, another sling, another, bipod, whatever it is. It all comes off the old gun. Excuse me, sorry for you headphone listeners. It all comes off the old gun and it goes onto the new gun, because that's the new exciting thing, right? But if you're like me, you can't afford to put an attacker on every single, AR-15 that you have. That's why I only have one Night Force attacker 1-8 on that 14.5 URGI. So where Arken comes in is for the average gun owner who has multiple guns, who can't afford to put an attacker or a Leupold. Here's another one that the same friend of mine who has a 7-35 let me borrow his Mark V HD right here. This is the 35 millimeter tube. I believe it's the 3.5 to 18. Yeah, 3.6 to 18. Really expensive, really good piece of glass, right? And I'm borrowing this to kind of compare it to the Arken lineup too, because I don't want to come to you guys and just speak like a shill, like, hey, I'm going to make some money if you buy an Arken scope, which I will, and we'll get into that at the end. I have partnered with them. They gave me a discount code because I figured, hey, if you're going to buy an Arken anyways and you want to support the channel, you might as well do it by using bro code RDB, which gets you the lowest discount over at Arken. But I forget where I went. My ADHD fashion threw me away, of course, as always. But this is going to keep the same time, so to speak, whether it's an attacker, and it's going to get you. I mean, the glass is the biggest asset of the Arken lineup, if you ask me. The glass quality is phenomenal. Again, it's like that taste in wine. You're really going to be able to tell. And I mean, at the range, I was looking side by side, the 7-35 attacker versus the 7-35 Arken. And at the top end, at the 35X, you can tell a little bit more detail in the attacker, right? But that attacker is like a almost $4,000 scope, if I recall correctly. It's up there, and this is not even close to touching $1,000 with my discount code as well. So, can you really compare the two? And I would say the answer is no, right? I'm not saying if you have one rifle and you have unlimited budget, is the Arken going to be the absolute best option for you? No, I don't think anyone's under that illusion, right? Some guys will claim that. I'm not claiming that. I'm claiming that throughout most of the zoom range on this specific scope, and on the 4-16 even, which has Chinese glass, I can't tell the difference between the attacker and this guy. And another thing, people, that I realized very quickly, if you actually shoot your guns and you take them out to the range and you're blowing up dust, once that lens gets dirty, that like 5 or 10% of better performance you're getting out of a much more expensive optic goes away, because that dust gets on your lens and that clarity goes away with that use, right, over time. And some will say, okay, well, if the Arken is already 10%, 90% of the way there, and then it also gets dust on it, okay, I get what you're saying 100%. I'm not trying to claim this is going to outperform in the specifics with a scientific experiment, like a C does type review. Is this going to outperform some of those much higher dollar items? And I don't think it should really be compared to those, right? But from what I've experienced, far as budget or entry level optics go, these things really do punch above their grade, right? Now, there are some things that I will be 100% open and honest, and Arken has been very good to me about not trying to pressure me or anything like that into not mentioning these things, because there are some things that I have to complain about with these scopes. And we'll start with the 7-35 because that's what I started with as well. And the number one thing I have a complaint about is the turrets. The turrets slip. You have 3 set screws on the turrets here, and if you don't rock set them, vibratight them, something, they will back out. Especially this gun is 7 pounds, shooting a 7 PRC. It's got an incredible amount of recoil. Same thing with the 4-16 on the Scar 17. Scar 17 is known for demolishing optics, and that's the reason that I went with the Scar 17 to test this optic with. And as you can tell, Arken also sent me a scope cam, which when we have the full review, we'll be showing you the footage, the POV footage with this thing, which is pretty cool. But the reason I put this on the Scar is because the Scar is known for demolishing optics. Now, I am running an American Defense specific Scar mount, which I love. I love this thing. Arken was confident their mount would be totally fine on the Scar as well, but I just already have this one painted. It matches, so I just left it on here. But it happened with both of these optics. The set screws on the turrets came loose, and then when I went to make an adjustment for zeroing, for instance, or when I was dialing out the distance, that turret slipped, and it was just like, it was a really disappointing thing, because again, I was just getting into my reviews, just getting into the long range portion, and then those set screws backed out and the turret slipped. So that was very frustrating. After talking to Arken, they said they've had very little complaints about that. And the biggest thing is like just put Vibrotite on them. I don't know if they should start shipping them with Vibrotite, but that's just my 2 cents. That was extremely frustrating. Luckily, I'm seasoned enough at the range that I know to bring my tools with me. I have Rockset with me. I have Loctite with me. I have pretty much anything that I would need to reset a scope or something like that on me when I'm at the range, because that's happened with multiple optics, or it's not just Arken, but this is one complaint that I have specifically. And I brought it up to them, and we've talked about some ways maybe to mitigate that besides just the Vibrotite on those set screws. But they're not making any changes as of right now, as far as I know, because again, they don't have, according to them, they don't have a lot of customer complaints about it. That was my biggest complaint to them, honestly, because again, the glass quality is this thing's biggest asset. Now, how they get away with that, I think it's because they don't try to compromise on the size or the weight of the scope. You know, these are fairly large optics when you look at them next to some of their competitors as well. You know, this Leupold 3.5, 3.6 to 18 has a larger magnification range, and you see just how much smaller it is than the Arken is. But again, it's like, it's an entry-level optic. I'd rather have the glass quality and the optical performance over the size and the weight savings, right? That's just me though. So just things to consider. Now, the other large complaint I have did not affect the performance of the 7 to 35. However, it does just concern me a little bit. And I talked to Arken about this, and they did let me know they're going to send me out a new one, a warranty for this guy. But pretty much the parallax adjustment on here, on this specific scope, none of the other scopes have this issue, but you're not gonna be able to see it by me rotating it, but there are little like hiccups in the parallax ring. So when I'm going through the parallax adjustment, I could feel it like almost snagging a little bit or like gliding in some areas. It feels like a fluid hydraulic. Like the 5 to 25 is perfect. It feels like a fluid hydraulic the whole way through. But on the 7 to 35, I'm feeling a little bit of a skip or like a stutter almost. And after talking to Arken, they said that is not supposed to be happening. So they're going to send me another one out to replace this one. So that is good. The other thing is, like, with a budget made in China optic, what is the quality control like? Well, I could tell you, out of all the scopes that I have from them, they're all really good besides this one issue here. The turret slipping is kind of a design issue in my opinion, but again, with a Vibrotite, to be determined. We'll talk about that into the future. I don't have a ton of time with these optics, but I did want to come out with this real talk for now because the Black Friday deals are pretty incredible on these things. So we'll have more long-term reviews. I want to be just completely honest with you guys, as I always am. I don't have a ton of time. I don't have years worth of experience with these things. I have a couple months worth of experience with them, but not enough to really confidently say, okay, I know this, this, and this about them. But so far, so good, besides this one issue. And they're sending me another one out. And again, lost my train of thought there. Sorry, guys. Got a lot of things to say in a short amount of time. I am running their rings here with a titanium, little section down here, I guess you would say. So I think they took a cue from Night Force's book with those little titanium spots right there, and they've been phenomenal. It is a very tight gap down here, but we've had no issues with that little gap there on the waypoint. And this thing shot amazing, phenomenal. So I'm very excited about it. I do love that they have a full lineup of magnification range and scope choices. I am in talks with them to potentially do a couple other things, and hopefully we can bring that to you guys in the future. I'm very excited about that. But overall, my experience with these scopes has been, I cannot tell the difference for maybe at the 35X on this guy versus a $4,000 scope. I can tell a tiny bit of difference, but most people are not going to be able to tell that difference. And as I said, I haven't had them long enough to beat them up long enough to be able to tell you if they're extremely durable or not. All I know is that it survived the SCAR 17 and this extremely light. This thing kicks like a mule, dude. This 7 PRC, this whole gun weighs 7. I think the optic might weigh half the weight of the gun. I don't know how much this optic actually weighs, but this gun is so lightweight. It's unbelievable. When the 7 PRC kicks, it's wild. So it's survived these incredibly high recoiling guns that are known for demolishing optics, and I can't tell the difference. So I know a lot. Again, I'm not the C-Does. I'm not the guys who get the chromatic aberration charts out and put the camera behind it and start showing you guys. Like, that's not me. I feel like I'm the average shooter. Now, take somebody else's word for it if you'd like, but for the average shooter, I think most people, if I put a Night Force sticker on the side of this thing and I showed you POV footage of shooting through it, besides the reticle that you might recognize, like, I don't think people are going to notice the difference in the glass quality. I mean, honestly, because to the even for somebody who shoots tens of thousands of rounds a year, I still can't tell. Again, like, I'm looking at them side by side. It's not like I looked at them the next day or something like that. Looking at them side by side, and in fact, there was two other shooters there who had the Vortex Razor 6-36 or 6-30, whatever that one is. And then they also had a Calais there as well. The Calais looked really good actually. But again, these are scopes that we're talking about that are in the over $3,000 to $4,000 price range, whereas these guys on Black Friday sales are going to be coming in almost at $500-600. I don't know how much this one is exactly. The 4-16, unbelievably priced at $280 with my discount code. So you can't really talk about it whatsoever. So the main point I wanted to bring up was the law of diminishing returns. So here's the 1-8 Arken. Not a huge fan of the reticle. Again, some of the feedback I gave them, including that, not even, I think they've heard that plenty of times before. But the glass quality on the 1-8 is really awesome. I mean, all of these scopes deserve their own individual review, and hopefully I can bring that to you guys using the scope cam in the future when we have more time and more rounds through these things as well. But the law of diminishing return says that this scope right here that might cost you again, I don't know the exact price. With the Black Friday deal, it's probably around $300 or less maybe. So you're talking about literally 1/10 of the cost of my Night Force Attacker 1-8. So you have a 1-8 here and a 1-8 there. Now, forget about the mount because I do prefer Badger Condition 1 mounts, although there's nothing wrong with this Arken mount whatsoever. It's performed really well so far. I'd like to see maybe one day the ability to add a top mounted dot. Again, some things I'm discussing with them. But you're talking about 10x the cost for a Night Force Attacker. Are you getting 10x the performance? And the law of diminishing returns states you are not. And in fact, the more you spend, the smaller the gap in performance you get, right? It's like buying a $350 4K TV, a Vizio TV, and then you're going to go spend $3,500 on a Sony OLED or something like that. You're not going to get 10 times the picture quality. You might get 1.5 times the picture quality. And the TV is a bad example because it is picture quality, right? We're talking about scopes. But I mean, I just don't see, maybe you could argue for durability, maybe you could argue for certainly track record and use overseas and combat and whatnot. But I don't think you could really make the argument for picture quality if you're being honest with yourself, if you're looking at them side by side. I mean, obviously I want to support made in America companies and all that good stuff, but there's a certain point where I've supported Geisley, I've supported Energetic, I've supported, all these other companies that I buy parts and whatnot from. There's a certain, something's got to give, and I can't afford to put an attacker on every single rifle I get. So I think Arken is really well suited for the guys like me who are just normal guys who might have a couple rifles sitting in the safe that don't have optics on them. When I got the, I had that EOTech 1-10 on my HK MR556, and that was kind of like my DMR, my SPR, so to speak, after I got rid of my Mark 18, or my Mark 12 rather, sorry, 18-inch barrel. I made that gun fit the role of that SPR, and I had that 1-10 EOTech on there. But then I got the Super Duty 11.5, which proved to be extremely accurate, and I wanted the ability to glass out a little bit further, so I took it off that gun, and that gun's sitting naked right now. So I fully intend to get another 4-16 to put on that gun because I did want a higher magnification range with that gun anyways, because I was able to reach out to 700 yards over at XMTG when I did that scope carbine course. So again, I'm not going to be able to go and afford one of these guys for $2,500 to put on that gun when I've already got an insane amount of money into that gun because HK is ridiculous as it is. So that's where I see the Arken line of scopes fitting, right? And there's other options out there. I'm not trying to compare. This isn't a comparison video because I don't have enough time with the primary arm stuff, SLX line stuff. I've had some primary arm stuff in the past. I love their reticles, but Arken's reticles are also really good. I love the wind holes that they have. They're super effective. I was able to take this guy pretty easily, besides the barrel heating up and losing accuracy over time, which we'll get into when we do the full review on this gun. By the way, Energetic Armament Lux on this thing sounds absolutely phenomenal. No ear pro. I mean, you should always wear ear pro if you're shooting a ton of rounds, but if you're hunting like this, like I did shoot like about 70 rounds of 7 PRC through this gun with this can on there without ear pro, and it sounded phenomenal. But with that being said, I zeroed this, I grouped this gun. We were able to track, this thing tracks extremely well from what I can tell. And I was able to shoot this thing and get confirmed impacts on like 12-inch plates and man-sized plates out to 1,000 yards. So confirmed this thing worked phenomenally well to get us out to 1,000 yards with a 7 PRC, which is essentially a chip shot for this caliber. But Then on the Scar 17, again, this thing is infamous for just beating optics to death. This guy has the SH4 Gen 2 4 to 16 on it, and it performed phenomenally well. And I was able to walk this thing out, get accurate hits out to 600 yards from 2 to 6, 200, 300, 400, just using the holds in the reticle. So speaking of reticles, the reticle is pretty badass in these guys as well. So very excited to continue testing these things. I think that Arken is only going to get better. I think that this is just the beginning for them. I think their scopes are already phenomenal, but there's little ways to improve them, I believe. And I think that with that, I'm going to continue to work with them, and hopefully we can partner together on some future projects, right? I have some ideas for scopes that I wish other companies had made, but no one will give me the time of day. And Arken has been really, really open to suggestions, open to my feedback, and open to improving their products based off that feedback. So we'll see what we end up doing with the turret caps, all that stuff. If we end up making some changes, or they end up, I don't say we, if they end up making some changes based off my recommendations. But lastly, the one last thing I will tell you about the downside, I guess, more of a cosmetic thing. On the rest of their scopes, they have an arrow right here on the body of the scope. It's a tiny little, just a little tiny triangle. I don't know if you guys can see that there. To show you where your parallax is at, I think you can see it. Right there. And on the 7 to 35, for whatever reason, it is not there. So again, kind of a minor complaint, but something to note. I'm trying to be extra nitpicky for you guys so that no one can call me a shill. Someone definitely still will, obviously, but you know what? I like to support companies that support me. And these guys were nothing but supportive and super helpful. So again, bought this 7 to 35, and then they sent out the rest of their lineup. And I gotta say, after seeing it, and there was no requirement, right? I asked them if they would send it out. I told them if I liked the scopes, I would talk about them. If I didn't, I'd either send them back or I wouldn't talk about them on the channel. I'm not one for drama. I don't like to incite drama in the industry. So if I don't like a product, I just won't review it. That's just my personal stance on it. So there you go. But the Arken stuff, again, I believe it fits a really cool role for a lot of people like me who just can't afford to put $3,000, $4,000 glass on everything. Now, if you're a guy who just got into guns, bought an Accuracy International or bought, a MRAD, but Mountains Mall America actually used this gun in a long range course. I recommend everyone watch that video. It's pretty sick. The dude's pretty cool. I like his channel a lot. But he has an MRAD. The reason I brought that up, he has a really nice MRAD Mark 22 clone, and he has a 7 to 35 Arken on there, and he, with a scope cam, filmed his extreme long range shooting competition, and it shows really well how capable these scopes are, which is badass. But if you are that guy who just wants one creme de la creme rifle, then go ahead and buy an attack. I'm not talking about badly about Night Force. I love those guys. I love Night Force. I like Leupold. I've never actually owned a Leupold, but everyone I've looked through looks pretty decent. In fact, my buddy who owns this one claims that, because I just say claims because I don't have any time behind this specific scope right here. But the reason I have it in my hand is because he bought it specifically for the HK, and he put the Arken 4 to 16 on there, and he likes it better. He thinks the Arken outperforms this. And again, I don't have time with this guy to confirm or deny that claim. I'm not claiming that, but he gave me this because of that exact reason. And he might comment on this video himself to tell you more about that. But that is the exact reason I have this in my hands, is he wants to sell it because the Arken just, in his opinion, outperforms it. And from what I've seen, again, you'll have those guys who claim they can taste the difference between the 2016 and the 2015. Like, I'm not that guy. It's good or it's not. Can I hit the target with the scope or can I not? And are there any glaring differences? And I can't see them with my naked eye. Maybe if you put it up to a computer that analyzes glass and analyzes images, maybe then, but for the naked eye and for the 10x less cost, like, you just can't really beat it, in my opinion. And I haven't been easy on these, besides just the recoil of these guns themselves. These guns get tossed around, they get beat up, especially that Scar. I had it in the bed of my truck when I was driving around the range, and it's very bumpy. And I honestly did that on purpose, just to make sure, because again, that Scar is beating up that scope already. And then I just throw it in the bed of my truck, and we're just driving around, and there's no padding. This is like, it's in the bed of the truck, and I could hear it clinking around back there, and it remained zeroed, and it remained accurate. So again, I think that if I didn't feel so strongly about the fact that I want as many Americans to be completely kitted out as possible, and it's the same argument with Holosun, right? I mean, a lot of people will get on Holosun because they say they steal designs and this and that. I'm not saying maybe that's a bad example, but Like if I can have a red dot on every pistol that I own and have one RMR or one SRO on like my carry or my competition gun, and then the rest of my guns have Holosuns, like Holosuns never let me down either. This is not a video about Holosun. I'm not claiming to like them or hate them, but I do like the idea that you can buy a relatively affordable scope and then go spend a ton more money on ammo, or you could spend that extra money you didn't spend on the Night Force, or I keep calling out Night Force, I mean call it zero tolerance, Zeiss. You insert several $1,000 scope here, you can go spend that money on a training course, a long range sniper course, or whatever it might be, right? And save that money, because that difference in performance you're getting versus this Arken right here, it's just not gonna make you a better shooter, in my opinion. It's not gonna make you be more accurate. The training is, and having more rounds downrange, having more practice downrange. And then obviously you can always upgrade, because it's not really that big of a loss if you want to start out with something like this and then upgrade. I know I've made videos in the past, and it may sound like I'm backtracking, but you know what? We're all human. We could change our opinions, right? But I'm not even changing my opinion on this. I've talked about good glass, eat ass, right? Like save up for that good glass, because it's easier to resell a gun than it is to resell glass. That's not the case anymore. In fact, I know I just made that video not that long ago, but the used gun market is so oversaturated since COVID, since George Floyd, and all those people who bought guns the first time returned them. And then there was this huge shortage with the manufacturing side, so they ramped up production. And now we have this huge influx of guns on the market. So the used gun market, if you're in a free state, like reselling a gun used to be a good investment. I just don't see that as great as an investment anymore. In fact, I've taken some losses on some stuff. I had to sell back to the gun shop to pay off my nods and whatnot. We're not getting into that. That's a different topic for another time. But this glass, I don't even think it's necessary for. I'm not saying you would have to upgrade this with their customer service. Like if anything happens to it, they're going to replace it. They've been around long enough now that we know they're probably going to be here to stay. They've been extremely successful, so I'm just happy to be a part of that with them. And if you're going to buy one anyways, I would really appreciate it if you use my code. And I think it is worthwhile to investigate this, because again, the barrier to entry is so low. If you have a gun sitting in the safe, spend $200-300 and get an Arken, or 300 or 400 bucks, maybe five for like the higher end stuff, with the Japanese glass, and try it out. See what happens. See how it works for you. See what you think about it. And it's really a small barrier to entry, and they do hold their resale value. When I resold mine years ago, I sold it for pretty much exactly what I paid for it, maybe minus like shipping. I ate the shipping cost to the guy on tax swap. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much for staying to the end of the video. Again, Brownells RDB10 over at Brownells. You can use the link in the description below. I would greatly appreciate that. For Arken, it's RDB. It will get you the lowest discount possible. So they have tons of discounts out there with some other affiliates, and also they put lowest on their website. But if you use RDB when you put in that code, it will get you the lowest discount, and it will also give me some credit in affiliate sales. So just know that, for full disclosure. I will get paid if you buy this, but again, I'm not telling you to buy it, but I just, in my experience, they're worthwhile. I think a lot of people might discredit them, or a lot of people might swear by them. By the way, I never mentioned this. I have a ton of customers for my day job who believe in and love the Arken lineup as well. That's what made me attracted to them in the first place. That's what made me even consider buying the 7 to 35, and then also moving forward, partnering with them and actually accepting a discount code, because I'm very weary about accepting discount codes or partnering with any manufacturer. That's why I love Brownells, because you could buy anything on there. You could buy, I mean, you can't buy these guys because they're direct, but you can buy Night Force, you can buy a Geisley rifle, you can buy ammo, reloading. So it kind of keeps me clean, I guess you could say, away from like being biased. But again, I will call out every single thing that I don't like about the Arken, and Arken has been nothing but like, yeah, dude, you do you. We're not trying to influence you whatsoever, and say what you want to say, because at the end of the day, the authenticity is what's going to sell these for you guys. Like if I'm out here saying that there's nothing wrong with this thing, no one's going to believe that. And I think some channels do that, and maybe they're successful with it, but there are some things that these leave to be desired, but not for the price. Again, that's what I think the biggest thing is, like, for the price. And it's not even like save up a little bit more and get a better scope. Like there's nothing really in between the Arken lineup and the attacker, in my opinion. Like there's some Trigicon Credo stuff, and like, but none of it has all the features that this guy has. The good reticle, like one of my biggest complaints about other companies is the lack of reticle options. And this is just a phenomenal reticle as standard. I like the Christmas tree reticle. Some people don't, but I like it. They also have some just straight crosshair stuff. But again, without, in the effort of not making this video 45 minutes long, we're just going to wrap it up. We'll come back to this topic either on individual optics, or as I have more time with all of them and to rediscuss them and give you guys my updated opinion. But so far, I'm a huge fan. I'm a believer in this company. I've spoken to the individuals who run it and who are involved in the customer service side, and everyone's been nothing but phenomenally easy to deal with and pleasant to deal with. And from everyone I've talked to, people that I trust, they've given me the same feedback. So again, RDB over at Arken Optics will give you the lowest discount. Right now they're running Black Friday sale, so it is a phenomenally good price for all of these scopes. In fact, the 5 to 25, when you look through this thing, it reminds me of the Razor lineup where the scope body just literally disappears. It's such a thin bezel. I really love this thing. So, but RDB over at Arken Optics, RDB 10 over at Brownells, RDB 5 over at Downrange Thermal. And like, comment, and subscribe, guys. I really appreciate it. Love you guys. And until next time, see you later.